You're listening to From the Horse's Mouth, intrepid conversations with Phil Fersht.
Hi, welcome to the latest edition of From the Horse's Mouth podcast. I'm your host, Phil Fersht, and with me today is none other than a longtime friend and in the industry, I see him as a friend, is Manish Sharma, who's been 30 years at Accenture. He ran operations, he ran the Americas, and now he's running what's termed as Reinvention services, which is Accenture's bet that continuous reinvention is a fundamentally different operating model from a transformation program. So before we get into the substance, I want to ask the blunt question. So Manish, when you look at what Accenture built versus what you're building now, is this generally a different movie, or is it the same movie with a bigger budget and special effects?
You really cracked me up with that question that you asked. Very, very clearly, it's the former. I think, it is a completely different movie. Phil, it is my 32nd year. This is the biggest ever change that we have ever done. So, absolutely a totally different, movie here. I think, and I kind of add few comments around that, right? One is the traditional transformation. I think it treats change, which is like a project with a start and an end date. And when I define reinvention, right? Reinvention changes how the client operates. It is a permanent capability, which means a modern data foundation, I think redesigned processes, and a workforce model where people and AI work together. And I think if a client sees a new capability that keeps on compounding after the go live, that is reinvention. But if the value stops when the program team leaves, then it is transformation. And I think here we are talking about is reinvention at scale for our clients, where the new capability keeps on compounding, after our go live. And that is kind of the true value that we are seeing, Fred.
Right. So, so let's think a bit about this. You've got your acquisition machine in full motion recently. I've noticed. Very impressed with faculty for decision intelligence. I've seen you invest in some network capabilities. You've invested in Replit as well to develop a capability. But acquisitions in professional services are notoriously hard to integrate, and culture each strategy and all that. So what's different about what you're stitching together now, and what is the engine and the gaps that you're trying to fill to really move you as fast as you can forward?
So I think first, if you look at historically, I think we are one of the most acquisitive company in the world, and we have been very, very successful. In our investments, we measure them in a very rigorous way, and we have had phenomenal outcomes, from this. I think few things on this, right? First is how fast we integrate is what matters. I think M&A for us is builds, beyond what our delivery teams are kind of doing. So it adds. So for us, we look at additive stuff. It augments and it accelerates our time to capability. The goal is for our clients to feel the new delivery shape in days and in weeks, and not even in quarters. I think, and then integration speed does not only come from acquisitions, it also comes how we work with the ecosystem. So as you're kind of seeing some of the, faculty, UCLA, DLB, which is, very, very interesting. And it is right now exploding, actually, even as we speak, even in a very short period of time. We have got partnerships with Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini. We shape how the models operate inside the enterprise, workflows with controls, with data boundaries, and also accountability is in place. So we, I think, invest in integration the way most firms don't. We have actually dedicated leaders whom we pull out of our practice and they run the acquisition and they own the outcome. We also match the integration model to the acquisitions. Some get folded into our core services. Others run as a new or an adjacent business. So, for example, DLB, we are keeping it very distinct. Faculty, we are keeping it very distinct. UCLA, we are going to be keeping it very, very distinct, not from, because we will use the power of Accenture to kind of help them grow, but they are right now exploding as we speak. And I think some of the examples that I'll give, look at faculty you mentioned, right? Decision intelligence capability, it changes how clients run and execute. It simulates trade-offs and really optimizes all the decisions. And it's not just reports results out there. Replit, where we have invested. I think the debate is not AI native versus traditional software engineers. It is about applying engineering discipline in a new way to build agentic software. And more code generated faster is not the win. The win is that code that translates to business value, which Phil, you have heard, you and I have been on the journey on that one, right? Relentless focus on business value.
Yeah.
Not more tech debt, not more integration work downstream. DLB, as I mentioned, is another example, which is it adds end-to-end data center capability. It does, it's phenomenal, right? It takes the site selection to deployment to operations, so clients can move faster when the AI demands put pressure on the core value chains. So very exciting, and I think you will see more and more in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see the speed of the tech, how it's developing. And I think on the enterprise side, they get it in terms of why they need to do this. So they're not stuck on the why, but I see a lot of enterprise customers, they need to transform. They keep telling us they don't know how to pull it off. They're caught in this pilot purgatory trap, et cetera, et cetera. So how do clients generally get ready for agentic AI? Do you still see a gap where they're 2 or 3 years behind readiness, or do you think that gap is getting closer now?
So I will say here that a lot of companies, they are still treating AI as a tool to deploy and not a change to how the business runs. So if you don't redesign the work itself, the process boundaries, the accountabilities, and for me, one of the most important things, how does the P&L impact is getting measured? Nothing gets past the first use case, which you and I have seen like probably millions of use cases. So it is not all or nothing. Some parts of the enterprise are kind of ready. The parts where the process is clean, the data is solid, the controls are strong, and some parts of the enterprise are not ready. But I think there is a humongous amount of work, and I think I always see that for us AI has become a huge tailwind, because just now the company is coming and figuring out the things, how to deploy AI has become massive. So I think that it's a wrong question to ask if the company is ready for agents. I think the right question will be, where can we put agents today to get real value? And for me, that is around good processes, good data, good controls, good digital core. That is kind of the real question. And some of our clients are scaling now, right? So it is kind of really moving fast. And some are still stuck.
Yeah. What do you think gets them unstuck? Is it trusting the tech more? Is it empowering people more? Is it building more confidence? What do you think, from especially what you've seen in the last 6 to 12 months, are the keys to the kingdom here for clients?
For me, it is about five things that the client should be doing. And I think it's always important to kind of keep on remembering that. And that is why, you and I have been chatting this for 20 years, and now some of our beliefs are kind of proven now, right? Means first one is they have to really focus on the process stuff. You can't automate bad processes, and that holds true. You can't AI and identify bad processes. That's the first one, right? Mr. Key unblock. The second one is, where is your data? And are you really investing in putting a structure around your data? Third one is your digital core, which is kind of really, really important. Is it ready out there? The fourth one is your operating model. And the last one, I think, is your talent ready for this change? So I think if you're able to unblock, these five, you're on to something. But you require patience, you require perseverance, you require grit to kind of change, these five things. And that is why, I know the clients wants to, and most of the companies are looking for the sizzle and quick this thing out on this, but it is a lot of hard work. And I always, keep on saying, tell me the line item in the P&L where it is making impact. That has got to be the starting point.
Yeah. This takes me to something, and we call it the AI velocity gap, which is the gap between individual AI readiness and enterprise AI readiness. Us as individuals, we're so empowered to explore new tools. The risks are fairly low. We're willing to take chances. We know we need to really understand them to be successful in our careers. But then some of us go to work on a Monday morning, and you still have, as you just described, bad process, tribal data. The enterprises are not moving fast enough to accommodate individuals. And I worry that good companies or companies who haven't fixed their debts are going to lose talent, because talent's not going to want to stay in companies that haven't figured this out. So how do you go about this? Accenture, you've got 800,000 people. How does change management work in a company your size, and how do you translate this to your clients?
See, I think on the talent stuff, right, means we have been discussing tons around this, right? I think first for us is a lot of companies are still training people for yesterday's job rather than a world where people and AI work together. That is why, we are rethinking the rules, the structures, the job family to match where work is headed and not where it has been. So that's kind of point one, right? Second one, which I say is, and you would have seen us as you track as well, right? We continue to hire at the entry level, and we are building what I believe is the world's largest AI native workforce. The world's largest AI native workforce. And that is where it is about training for the future that we are talking about. Then I'll give you some example, right? Because it's always good to kind of talk with very specific. Like let's take, a mid-career delivery lead, in Bangalore. About even 12 months back, a typical day was spent on status, hands-offs, and some of the manual QA. Today, that lead is spending more time on exception management, product thinking and controls, defining what good looks like, right? Validating output, shaping workflows, and coaching teams on new role expectations. And this is a perfect example. This is AI as a growth story. I think productivity frees capacity, and value only shows up when leaders redeploy that capacity into work that drives growth, better experiences, and new outcomes. And without a real deployment, AI fails to deliver. So I think we are on our way to create, probably a scale which has never been seen in terms
Right.
of creating the world's largest AI native workforce, as we talk through this revolution, actually.
Yeah, and I've seen you guys are doing a lot of graduate fresher hiring. You're changing the sort of nature of your skills base. Can you talk a bit more about what you see is really working and where the challenges are right now? Like, you guys are excited about entry level people. What do you think is the most important thing for a mid career person to consider as they look at these changes?
I would say, as for us, it is earlier, and that is kind of part of our reinvention services, right, where we are kind of focused on different personas of our clients. But what we require is not a single dimensional skill set. You can be deep in something, but along with a technology and AI skills, you also need to understand the industry, the process, and the data. And this is where we are kind of, what we call as reinvention deployed engineers. A very distinct version where we are trying to kind of get in one single person a combination of industry process, and the technology and the AI mindset, in
Right.
that person, because that is only when you are able to solve the piece. So I think you need to be deep in something, but along with this, you need to build an orientation because every industry is different, every process is different, and you need some deep skills in those areas.
Interesting. So, how does this change culture? So we talk a lot about software versus services, trying to turn the world's largest consulting firm into something that behaves more like a product company, and especially with these exciting acquisitions that you're making, Manish. So, but services DNA is people, it's relationships, it's billable hours. Product DNA is platforms, repeatability, and margin at scale. So those two cultures do not naturally coexist. So what does that tension actually look like inside Accenture today? And how do you navigate it without losing what made the firm great in the first place?
You know, a services culture can solve bespoke client problem fast. You just go there, you kind of run, align yourself for what the client needs. I think a platform culture uses standardization to scale margin, right? So that's kind of the two parts. And I think reinvention needs both. So if you look at Accenture, right, it lives inside the client workflows. It shapes how work runs end to end. The platforms sit next to these client workflows. Accenture builds repeatable assets, deploys them inside the client workflows, and adapt to the unique constraints of an organization. The goal is actually to deliver software like reliability in services with trust intact. Trust is an important part. When done right, and this is what we will execute, platform enables services, diversifies different revenue streams. It gets to outcomes much faster for the client because you
Right.
got to start with the client, right? And it kind of really really delivers those business outcomes much faster, right? And it kind of, you diversify to IP, data assets, and repeatable solutions. It leans into what makes each great, right? So for us it is, a combination, because reinvention will require a platform culture and a bespoke solution for a client. So we are going to combine the two, and that is why, feel very good about, the direction that we are taking.
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about for a very long time, and it feels like it's finally happening. Where we've got, I think the leaders in this market are really trying to think more in a more platform centric way. So when you look inside Accenture with all this AI investment and all this reinvention language, what are the two like KPIs your team actually watches out for? Not the ones in the investor deck, the ones that you look for on a Monday morning. What metric do you wish the industry would stop obsessing over entirely?
For me, the two KPIs, they tell whether reinvention compounds are value delivered and reuse, right? I kind of think about some of the productivity percentages, I call the vanity metrics, I call them, right? Nobody can attribute, do not, right? So the biggest hurdle is not what KPIs do I choose, but rather that most enterprise don't have an embedded value measurement system. Everyone is measuring after the fact, which is too late to course correct. Value measurement has to be built into the workflow itself, not added at the end of the quarter, right? So for me, it is about value delivered, which means measurable impact in cycle time, quality, growth, risk, or cost tied to a specific workflow owner. So I'm making it very precise. That is value delivered. Reuse means we do not reinvent the wheel, like components, the agents, the data patterns, and controls that kind of scale across teams, right? So for me, those two, value delivered and reuse, and kind of quickly, deliver what I call as speed to value.
I love that. So in a weird way, value is what is inherent in people, and reuse is what's inherent in software. So it's a really interesting way of pulling that together. So so let's think about the positioning bet. So IT services firms face automation risks from the bottom. Consulting firms face AI disruption of the decision layer from the top. So Accenture sits at that intersection of both at serious scale, right? So 5 years from now, what does success look like? And more importantly, what is the early signal that the strategy didn't work? What keeps you honest about the risk in the bet that you are making, Manish?
As I said, 32 years, I've seen the firm grow from, I was like the first few employees when we kind of got hired. I've seen many cycles. Success in 5 years means client relationships that outlast any single tech cycle, because clients are trusting us to reinvent the core workflows, not just deploy tools. So client relationship that will outlast any single tech cycle. I know you kind of mentioned about the disruption. I kind of see that as a tailwind to us, because we got the new stuff, and this kind of sets out for the next almost 5 to 6 years, yeah, a path for all the companies around reinvention. So very, very, focused around success in 5 years, client relationships which will last any of these tech cycles that we talk about, because, finally you have to continue to create value for the client. I think an early warning signal, because you asked on that, is we win on the tools, but then we fail to produce the outcomes, adoption, and the operating model change. So I am very, very focused around we should not be failing on that front.
Right.
Because tools will be, I deployed this and I deployed this model, I did this and all the stuff, nice stuff. But then I say, where is that outcome? Where is the adoption? Where is the operating model change? So for me, that would be the warning signal, Phil.
Right, right. So strip away, Manish, the org chart, the revenue numbers, the analyst coverage, all that stuff, and the real work of AI transformation is organizational, as you've said really well. It's not algorithmic. So what's the one thing you are building with reinvention services that you generally get excited about at dinner, right? The change that makes all the complexity and cultural tension worth it.
So it is funny, last few days I virtually met 5 clients and our teams there, right? And I just get inspired every time I meet my teams along with the clients co-creating. And I had, this big aha moments when I get is really, really, exciting is the moment when a team, it stops asking, how do we use AI? And starts saying, here is the new way work runs. That is important. Get out of it, but talk about the new way the work will run. That's a shift from AI as a tool to AI as an innovation lens. I think it eliminates the process debt instead of preserving it. I think it signals culture plus operating model. That's when the complexity becomes, worth it. And the second one, which excites me, Phil, is there's a lot of this thing about AI being a productivity tool. I personally believe, and I think it is our with the stuff that our teams believe, AI is the real turbocharger for revenue growth. While it will absolutely drive productivity, but the way I'm seeing the AI usage, whether it is in just growing sales, getting your revenue, that is the one that gets me to the second one that really gets me super excited. So changing the new way the work runs, and second, using AI beyond just a productivity tool, but as an absolute sales and a revenue and the growth driver for the companies.
Well, that's a great way to finish this conversation because getting that conversation away from tools, away from even AI to just how do we run the business now? Because these tools are moving so quickly, we probably won't even be calling them AI in another 12, 18 months' time, right? So,
Correct. And they will get commoditized, but value will never get compromised. It will never get this thing. So value is what matters in the end.
value is what matters in the end. And on that note, Manish, I wanted to thank you for a fantastic conversation. It's great to catch up with you again, and I can't wait for everyone else to share their views on what we've just talked about today. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil. Always enjoy our dialogue.